Alright, today we're going to be installing a auto dimming mirror in a W116 chassis, 6.9 liter Mercedes-Benz. And this is the mirror. This is the standard auto dimming mirror with Homelink and compass. This particular, you can see that the bracket on this mirror is unique to the W110 and the W116 chassis. These are the tools we're going to need to do this install. It's not an all-inclusive list of tools, but we're going to need some wire crimpers, some wire strippers. We're going to need some adjustable pliers, flat-headed screwdriver, flashlight, Phillips screwdriver with, mine has adjustable removable bits in it. I have a small flat blade in Phillips here. We need some power wire and a multimeter. The multimeter is used for determining which wire is switched 12 volt in the vehicle. On the W116 chassis, we're going to have to run some extra wiring along its headliner and into the dash area to get power. On a 124 or a 201 or a 126, even the 123s, we would normally tap into the sunroof switch in the headliner. So this installation is going to be a little bit more, labor intensive to do this install, but we're going to be utilizing for the most part the normal auto dimming mirror and the installation packet that ships with the mirror, and I'll show you what's inside the packet in just a minute. Okay, here's the contents of the installation packet that ships with the auto dimming mirror. We have wire splices. These allow us to tap in to wires. We're going to use this for our switch 12 volt power on our ground. I also include several white caps, and these are what we call them white caps, but they're also crimp caps. So you could take two pieces of wire, strip them, twist the wire together, put these caps on and crimp them down. You can also go that route, so I include a couple of these. Most people end up with these left over at the end of their install, but I include enough accessories here to try and cover any possible scenarios. We have a few wire ties for tying up our wires. This is our installation tool for getting the mirror popped back into its bracket. We'll cover that later. And this is the wiring harness. The wiring harness is approximately 13 inches long. It is designed specifically for the 124 chassis to go from the mirror under the headliner area up to the area where the map light assembly is, so we can tap into ground and a switch 12 volt. 13 inches is more than enough length to accomplish that. It's also usable on the 126 and the W123 as well. And there is a fusible link with a 5 amp fuse in it already. So this is what's included with the mirror installation accessory wise. Alright, here's the W116 6.9 that we're going to be working on and installing the auto dimming mirror in. And you can see that that's the factory mirror right there. Make sure that we've got that in focus. And Emmanuel, the owner of the car, is going to come in here, and he's going to help with the installation here. So our first step is removing the factory mirror, and this process is applicable to the 201, the 124, 123, this car, the 116, and it's basically Emmanuel's going to be grasping the bracket of the mirror, and he's going to be pulling at an angle to pop it out of its socket base. You can see how he's not holding on to the mirror itself, he's holding on to the bracket.
Alright, and I'm going to be basically going that direction.
Yeah, he's going to be pulling it in his direction at an angle. And he pops it out. And that's kind of how you have to do it. Focused on that. You can see it popped out without too much problem. You do sometimes have to put a little bit of muscle into it to get it to pop out, and that may vary from car to car. But again, you want to hold on to the bracket. You do not want to hold on to the mirror, because what you'll end up doing is you'll end up, if you hold on to the mirror or you pull by the mirror, you'll pop the mirror off the bracket. And you can see the manual's twisting it. The bracket is popped into a little plastic socket, so it does not take a whole lot of force to ruin the mirror. And if you pop this out successfully, you can keep this to install later on if you decide to sell your car, or you can sell this mirror by itself, so it does have value to sell. So this is our first step. And if you notice, this 116 chassis does not have a sunroof switch up here. So what we have is a dome light, and the dome light is running off a constant power. So this is not a suitable power source for our installation of this auto dimming mirror. So what we have to do is we're going to have to remove the sun visors, basically so we can get this panel to pull down a little bit, because we've got to route a single power wire all the way along the top of the windshield and down the A-pillar. You'll notice that the A-pillar's already been removed. Manuel's been working on this before I started the video. And we're going to run the power wire down underneath the dash, and we're going to bring it over to the radio area here, and we're going to tap in most likely to the cigarette lighter, because that is a good solid 12-volt source. Now to do this, it's going to require a length of 20 to 22 gauge power wire, multiple stranded power wire, and you're going to need, it's hard for me to say because we haven't done this yet, 6 to 10 feet of power wire to do this. I do not include that power wire for this type of an install. This is not the norm for most of the Mercedes when installing an auto dimming mirror. There's normally a map light assembly here that has a sunroof switch, and that's what we use. That's why my existing wiring harness that you saw earlier is all you really need. But on cars that don't have a sunroof or don't have a sunroof switch or another source of 12-volt power up in the headliner, you have to do this extra procedure and run wiring all the way down underneath the dash. So that is something, the wiring for this you would have to provide on your own. I'll be back shortly. We're going to loosen up this headliner area by removing these sun visors, and we'll be back. Alright, we're removing the passenger side sun visor. Since this is actually the first 116 chassis I've personally installed an auto dimming mirror in, so I'm making the assumption that removing this single sun visor will allow us to loosen up this panel a little bit. We don't need to remove it completely, we just need to get it loosened up enough so we can route our power wire. And this process is pretty simple, it just requires a Phillips screwdriver. And then our next step would be to...
That's interesting. There we go.
Okay. Now you may need to remove this piece as well. There's probably a single screw holding that in place. And sometimes those plastic pieces get brittle over time as well. The next part here is we've got 3 screws that hold this mirror seat in place, and those actually go into the sheet metal of the roof of the car. So if we remove that, we should have adequate play in the headliner trim piece to run our wire. Three Phillips screws holding that in. This bracket piece that he's removing is a little bit different than the 124 and the 201 and the 123, but it's just a little bit skinnier.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
Okay, so it looks like a manual. He has his fingers up underneath there, so we have the space we need to route the wire down and get it over to the A pillar. Now we're on to the next step here, which is removing the knee bolster on the passenger side, which is necessary to get access to the side of the center console, and that's the spot we're going to find switch 12 volt power. Normally in these cars you can find switch 12 volt power in a lot of different locations, but I always recommend we tap into the cigarette lighter or the radio. We know that both of those sources have ample current to spare, and the mirror doesn't draw a lot of power. I would avoid tapping into a power source where you don't know its original purpose, what it goes to. Okay, so it looks like there was 3 or 4 Phillips screws holding that rear knee bolster in place. And this will allow us to route the power wiring.
Yeah, there's these guys.
See those?
They may not be the original screws, but
that's true. They may not be original, but there's going to be 3 or 4.
In this car, very few things are original.
So we're gonna route this power wire down along the A pillar and then tuck it up kind of where these other power wires are. That way it's tucked up out of the way. It's not going to drop down, or somebody won't get in the passenger seat and catch their foot on it. So we're going to tuck it up out of the way and tie it. And for this, I brought along a spool of red 22 multi-stranded wire. That's the same type of wire I use for actually building the wire harness. Okay, at this point we've got some wiring routed from our mirror location up underneath the headliner, and we've got it down the A pillar, and we've got it routed right up into the radio location here, and we're going to tap into the switch 12 volt power used for the radio. So a little bit extra work, but that's kind of what we have to do to get our switch 12 volt power up into the headliner area. So at this point we're going to go ahead and put the panels back together, and we'll move on to hooking up the mirror next. Okay, at this point we've got the map light in the 116 pulled out. We're routing some wiring. We're going to hook up the wire harness. We've got our ground source. Our ground is going to be right here. This is connected to the chassis metal, so we're going to tap into that for ground. And of course this is the wire we ran for switch 12 volt. And we're going to connect our wiring harness, which is right here. I'm going to connect that. Hopefully this is viewable. I still got some sunlight coming in through the windshield, which is causing problems with the camera here focusing in this tight area. So I'll be back shortly with the wiring harness connected. Okay, at this point I've got the mirror wiring harness routed. And instead of using a splice connector here, since we ran red power wire, I used a crimp cap. You can see that out of this front hole, this is where the mirror mounts, we've got the plug. This is what we're going to plug the mirror into. This is his map light in the 116. Actually it's in 2 pieces because it's broken, so I'm going to have to fix that and put it back together. The ground. I used a splice right there. I tapped into the ground wire, and this goes directly to chassis. So we used a splice with a spade connector for the ground. And we've got the rest of our wiring harness right here is going to tuck up in this opening right here where this map light goes. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this all back together, and we'll be back to this point where we're ready to put the mounting base for the mirror back in.
Action.
Okay. Alright, I had to switch cameras here, so we're using a manuals camera, so if the picture quality varies from the other videos, that's why. We're at the stage now, we've got the wiring harness installed, you can see it right there, and I've got this put back together. This needs to be screwed back into place. I'm going to do that off camera and come back, and then we'll proceed on to doing the mirror. Okay. Inside the installation package is this tool, and this tool is designed to help ease in getting the mirror installed. So what you need is you need some pliers like this that have an adjustable grip on it, because what we're going to do is we're going to compress this spring right here, and it can be tricky. I have to compress it with my left hand because I'm right-handed. Okay, and once it's compressed over here, we can insert this tool like so. And I've got to get it compressed pretty much all the way right on that one end. Right like that. Okay, so when I get the spring compressed and I get the tool inserted, you can see that this pin is pretty much all the way flush. This one's still sticking out, but this one's flush. This is going to allow us to easily put the mirror back into the bracket, and then we just pull this out, this pin will pop out, and the mirror will be installed. So I'm going to move up here, and our next step is to plug in our harness. Like so. And we insert the wiring harness up into the opening. And then this is the end that has the pin sticking out, so this is the end we have to insert. And we insert that like so. And we push the other end up in there, and as we do this, this tool is going to kind of bend a little bit, and it's flexible, and that's exactly what it's designed to do. It's designed to bend. Now what we have to do is we have to hold the mirror in place, and we get our hand on this, and we wiggle it back and forth, and we pull it out, and the pin pops into place, and the mirror is installed. So that makes it real easy for the installation. And of course, we can reuse this if it doesn't break. If you ever need to take it out and reinstall it, keep this tool around. And we're done.